Hey everyone, today's video is going to be a spoiler review on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I watched the movie yesterday and I gave it another day before I did my review. This is full spoilers, and sorry if I repeat anything you may have heard other content creators and YouTubers may have said about this movie, but I hope I give a unique take. This film concludes the trilogy of Guardians of the Galaxy, or at least the version that we've come to know so far. And I think this trilogy has been really solid. It's probably one of the best trilogies in the MCU. I mean, there are obviously problems here and there, and this movie, there are some issues here and there, but it really concludes the trilogy really well. Like some people have said, like this is the best movie since the best MCU movie since Endgame. I can't say for certain if it is or isn't. There's been a few good movies and content they've come out with since Endgame. One of the biggest ones for me is Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. But I do think this is probably one of the better, or arguably best, films they've come out with since Endgame. Because there's been a lot of like bad stuff in there, like Thor: Love and Thunder, and obviously Werewolf by Night were not very good. Just to get that out there, I think Volume 3 it probably is one of the most emotionally impactful films that the MCU has come out with, at least since Endgame. You see in this movie, like if you really love animals or you have a general sense of empathy, you will. It's really hard to watch certain scenes of this because of like what happens to Rocket and Lila and Teefs and Floor, but specifically Rocket. Since this movie is his story, we see why Rocket, like his origin. There's like the hints of why he was like in the past, like he was seen as like a cynic and like incredibly sarcastic and seemingly unemotional or like pushing aside emotions. But with here, you kind of see why. Like sometimes when you go through tragic things in your life, sometimes you like bottle down your emotions and your feelings inside, or try to, or like get them, or like try to get them out of the way, or try not to focus on them. Because like when someone is hurt as badly as Rocket was, he didn't want to like care as much about others again because his closest friends in the galaxy or universe were tortured and slaughtered by the High Evolutionary and his minions. And even Nebula says what happened to Rocket was even worse than what Thanos did to her. And obviously, what Thanos did to her was horrible enough. But to see what happened to Rocket and what High Evolutionary did to so many animals, people, it's just really heartbreaking because to see living beings, whether you think they're sentient or not, being tortured and experimented on in such horrific ways, like not respecting their lives as living beings or sentient beings, not seeing their worth and value, see them poked and prodded and cut. Well, we didn't see that, but you hear it, and it's obviously apparent to us because of what happens to Rocket, because we see the signs of what happened to him in the former movies and him like having issues like trying to connect to others because of what happened to his friends. It really speaks to what horror and tragedy can do to somebody. Because Rocket arguably has one of the worst backstories and cruelest origins in the MCU that we've seen. I mean, you obviously Nebula, like the Guardians of the Galaxy are all like victims of trauma and cruelty in the past in some form or another. It's just with Rocket, it really drives home how horrible torture and lack of empathy can do to someone. And seeing what happened to Rocket it really pushes the idea of what some people are willing to do in search of a goal that's, as we know, wasn't really for the betterment of living beings. It was just this cruel and extremely narrow-minded view of what is perfect or what should be perfect. And with Rocket, we see his tragic backstory and what he goes through in this film, both his past and the present, letting himself open up to emotions and friendships again. I mean, we saw the bits of it in the first movie, and we saw it more developed in the second one, but we see things all really come together because here he is obviously being confronted with his past, and it's pushing forward like bringing back all these bad memories that he tried to bottle down because he didn't even tell his team about it. Because I mean, how would you go about telling your friends and your family this horrible origin and trying to share that because you don't even want to remember it yourself because you lost three of your closest friends in the world who were basically family to a madman and his minions, and you just don't want to put that in your mind and not feel it again and again because he blames himself for what happens. I mean, he understandably attacks a high evolutionary and just rips his face to pieces, but he believes he got his friends killed because of what happens before and after this. First, Lila being shot by the high evolutionary, and then the madman's minions killing Teeves and Floor. But he blamed himself so much when it's understandable why he thinks that way because in his he just reacted immediately. While he thinks he's not thinking of his friends, he was just thinking of getting revenge for Lila and inflicting as much pain on this sadistic individual as much as he can. And then it leads to him believing himself to getting his friends killed, but it wasn't his fault. I mean, whose fault it was the high evolutionary and the minions who killed his friends. And it's just him trying to like grow and like change as an individual to see that he, as he put it, he's done running and he wants to confront and stop all this horror and cruelty that keeps going on and on because of what the high evolutionary is trying to create. And we see that Rocket becomes, the hero that he was meant to be. I mean, there are, bits and pieces here and there that there are questionable in the movie because, like when Rocket doesn't kill the high evolutionary, he says it's because he's a guardian. I was a bit iffy on that line myself. Maybe, I get why he said that. I just thought he would say something like, he's already dead or I've already killed him, but that's just one point. And it's not just about Rocket, but it was mostly his focus. We see other Guardians like dealing with things that followed in game and Love and Thunder. Star Lord, he's obviously in the depressed state because Gamora, the younger version of her, doesn't want anything to do with him or the Guardians. She became a Ravager, and he's depressed, and he's been drinking because the love of his life, one way or another, like doesn't want anything to do with him. And she went off on her own after the battle on Earth with during Endgame, and he's been drinking, trying not to feel this. But with what happens with Rocket, it like leads him to trying to like get a grasp on things and like being confronted with Gamora again. I think it was good. Well, good in the sense that even though Gamora and him didn't get back together, it was like them trying to move on. Yeah, obviously Peter is heartbroken because of what happened, but this Gamora isn't the Gamora that fell in love with him. She's the version of her that didn't meet him. I mean, I'll get to Gamora in just a sec, but he talks with his sister Mantis about what he can do, like what he's feeling, and it comes to eventually where he like takes a leave of absence from the Guardians. I think he goes back to Earth to reconnect with his grandfather and his family there. He's trying to move on from what happened or what didn't happen with Gamora. I mean, he's still upset that this isn't the Gamora that he knew and that loved him. But it comes to the point where he accepts what's going on and what's happening. Is Gamora does not want to be with him, and while he's still saddened, he accepts that and he doesn't hold that against her, and he moves on, and Gamora accepts this, and like then eventually at this point, while they obviously aren't back together, they're on like good mutual terms. With Gamora, it's a bit of an issue. This was like the Gamora, like at that point in like the MCU timeline where she was trying to almost about ready to leave Thanos, and in game she fights against Thanos and his army, and sort of the same Gamora that was trying to tell the Ravagers during the first Guardians of the Galaxy that they needed to save Xandar from Ronan, and that she was like this trying to change and trying to like care about people rather than like doing what Thanos said. But here we see a Gamora who is like more detached and like not as caring as the one before. So I kind of found that a bit iffy. But this Gamora didn't go through the same things that the other Gamora did, so I just found that a bit iffy. It's cheating. Obviously, we see like the Gamora that we knew before like come and like uh, come later into the film. So it's one little issue, I guess, that's there, but like I guess is eventually resolved. So it sort of works itself out, but that's just one thing. But Gamora, she was a bit surprising and not in a way I expected, but she does like come into like who she was, but like in a new version of her, like or a version of her that didn't like experience what happened in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, 2, and Infinity War. But it's we see the semblance of like this might not be the same Gamora, but maybe it's not exactly the Gamora we knew, but she's still who she's. I guess you could say the same person deep down. Some of the other Guardians, I guess like it was trying to develop like give their own like pieces and storylines here. Mantis, she was eventually she goes off on her own for a little while. I think she's trying to discover herself because she said she only did things for what originally what Ego wanted her to do, and then what the Guardians wanted her to do. So she's trying to like go off and do her own thing, and it's been like a journey of self discovery. So she's trying to like find her own path in this film, or like she's going towards that. She's still trying to like trying to figure out how this little family works, but she still like feels a bit of out of place. But she's like wanting to like be able to realize and do something for herself rather than for others because as she thinks that she's always focused on others, so she needs to do something like that what she wants to do, what she feels she needs to do. And Nebula, she we see how she's grown more. I mean, she still has some like she still grows more into this movie, but we still see the semblance of her like turning from like trying to please Thanos and doing whatever he wants and trying to prove herself to him rather, but seeing her as more of a valued member of the Guardians and like showing how much she cares for the others. I mean, she stops Gamora from attacking Peter to defend both him and specifically Rocket because while she may feel like she owes him, but you see that she's developing her relationships and their bonds with the others. And by the end of the film, we see her wanting to like make a home for the victims of the high evolutionary and nowhere into a place where she would have wanted to grow up and live. She wants to make things better for others because she doesn't want them to go through the same or similar things that she went through. I think that development for her was pretty good. I think Drax like was probably I think maybe at his best in this film. We see more of the a character that he was really more meant to be. Like as it was put, he was not meant to be a destroyer, but meant to be a dad. And we see that while that's how it's moving towards it, but we see him being that warrior not only to avenge but also to save and protect others because of his loss he cares so deeply for people who are victimized by individuals like Ronan and Thanos, in this case the High Evolutionary. We see him as the more of the protective father figure to these people in the film that we see. He's ferocious in his combat, but not in a sadistic way. More in the way of like not like a cruel way, just more like the enjoyment of the battle, but also for the safety and of those who are still there, but also to avenge those who have been lost. And we see, and this is Dave Bautista's, I think, final film as Drax. So I think this was a really good send off for both the actor and the character. So I think Drax really did come along to who he's really meant to be in this film. Oh, and I forgot earlier when I was talking about Rocket, we see him in the films before this ending. This one where Rocket's saying he's not a raccoon. He's like the only thing like him is me. But we see in his memories, going through his memories of with his friends and the near-death experience where he reunites with his friends, and what Lila tells him like has been his story all along that he's her beloved raccoon. Well, he keeps saying he's not a raccoon, but when he's on the High Evolutionary ship and he comes to the same place I think the same place where he was held when he was young, and where he and his friends were held, and he sees like these same little animals that what he once was. We see the sign that says raccoon, and he realizes, and he says it to the high evolutionary during the a final fight against him, that he accepts himself for who he truly is and who he has been all along. Like he's maybe I think maybe didn't say he was a raccoon before because he wanted to think that he was his own, like he wasn't like what the high evolutionary was trying to make him to be, or trying to change him from what he was, or I don't know. Maybe I don't have the best understanding of this, and apologies if like the answer is clear and I'm not getting it. So sorry if I'm not getting it right away, or if I don't get it. But please tell me in the comments below if I'm misunderstanding this. And we see Rocket like his we see his him open himself up again to bonds and friendship truly in this film more than any of the others. We see that his uniqueness, not only because of who he is now, but what he always has been. Because even the high evolutionary was furious that his creation was and can do something even more than he could do himself. And Rocket has been trying to focus on more about what he can do now, rather than the whole entirety of who and what he always has been. And like he like accepts the inventor and the tech wizard and the battle tactician that he is now, but he accepts like the origin of what he always has been in his like animal self. Well, that's, I guess it's like the idea of identity for him, and realizing that what he people were always calling him, like he was insulted being called a raccoon before, and he will always get furious about it. And with this film, we see that his connection to these little raccoons, because he realizes he was and still is one of them, even though he may look different, he may talk now, he may think different, but he still is a raccoon at heart, and genetics and DNA and all that. But still, he realizes what what they are. He still is and always will be, and he accepts that for who and what he is. So I thought like him saying he's Rocket Raccoon now was really touching. So like him going through all this, like his memories and like his tragedy, and like who he eventually becomes as a great leader and a great friend, is really an emotional impact, because we often see, obviously, like these certain stories targeting mostly humans and their backstories, which I'm not saying it's any less tragic, or for what those characters go through and what people go through today. It's just seeing this film and seeing what animals can go through and do go through in certain situations where humans or people don't value them, as they see them as lower life forms and lesser than because of what they are, and seeing what they're willing to do for certain ends, is really speaks to like what all the horrors and tragedy can occur for multiple forms of life. And seeing like the animals to be free and accepting of what they are is really something, because this movie was really one of the most emotionally impactful films in the MCU, at least, like I said, since after Endgame. But I still think it's a very emotionally impactful film altogether. Like it's difficult to gauge like how it like how the total value of it is compared to the other Guardian of the Galaxy films, but this one I think really this film made me cry more than once, and it infuriated me at other parts, because like I think this was film made me feel all these kinds of emotions and feelings more so than almost than a lot of the other MCU films. But there are no issues here and there. One, I guess you could say, is maybe the antagonist of this film, the High Evolutionary. He didn't exactly have the presence of other MCU villains. Like The way Gamora talked about him, it's almost seemed to me like comparing him to Thanos. The High Evolutionary didn't have the same presence and feeling that Thanos like had, but we had more films with Thanos and like the lore and the conversations that we got about him, and like just seeing his like even points where he wasn't talking, like we could still feel like realizing how big a threat this guy was. And I didn't exactly get that feeling completely from the High Evolutionary. I mean, he didn't have the same, like I said, screen presence as Thanos. I mean, but like the probably the best MCU antagonist so far has to be Killmonger for me. But that's him and Black Panther will eventually be videos in the future, I hope. But the High Evolutionary, it didn't seem like he was as powerful as Thanos. I mean, he was powerful, but like it didn't seem like he like exactly fully presented like the presence and a sense of like danger that he had. But I do think he probably has been one of the cruelest and most vindictive and petty villains we've seen so far. Like he is so focused on this idea of perfectionism for a species and for the universe that he sometimes let the smallest things about others really like rile him up. Like he and like I said earlier with Rocket, he can't stand there could be someone better than him about anything. We see how he talks down to Rocket again and again, saying how he's lesser than, or how for how smart he was, he couldn't figure out that Rocket and his friends weren't going to be meant for the new world that the High Evolutionary always talked about. Like this, like those little bits of cruelty and sadism really show how petty he really was. I'm not saying that he wasn't like, maybe I should have said like he didn't present the same kind of danger, because he obviously like literally blew up a planet. Like he wiped out I don't know how many lives on Counter Earth, and we see that he sent like this legion of, well, I think he called them Hellspawn, to attack nowhere. He just wanted everything to be under his control in a specific way, and if anything didn't go his way, he would lash out in any which way or another. I mean, he is a villain I think you really love to hate. While he may not be as well written, or maybe hit the same feeling that you get from maybe other top tier MCU villains, but we see that he is this crazy madman who wants everything a certain way, and if it doesn't go that way, it's basically trashed him. He burns or destroys everything that he doesn't see is what he wants. But what he did throughout this film, in the flashbacks for what happened to Rocket and his interactions, or his the present of what he did with Guardians and Counter Earth and Nowhere, like you really wanted Rocket to get his claws on him again, and we see what Rocket did to him. You just wanted to see this guy suffer for what he's done to others, to animals, to people. You just want to see this guy like brought down, like to be shown he's not as perfect as he thinks he is. And we do get that at kind of the end, and we see what Rocket did to him. Now I think about it, like why didn't he, like he has all this crazy technology and everything, like why wasn't he able to like regenerate his or heal his face? Like he has this technology to like alter living beings, like all this genetic stuff. Why didn't he fix his face? I mean, like I don't think he didn't present me as the kind of individual who would keep like certain like scars or anything to like remind them of like what it's happened, and like keep that feeling and memory always there to like fix something or do something retaliation. Like I think he wanted everything to be perfect. So why wasn't he able like to fix himself? But that's just one little nitpick here. But there's another part that was kind of an issue, was like he was not human in origin. I think like the original character. I mean, I will say I don't know much about the High Evolutionary, just bits and pieces. I've seen him in other Marvel creations and media and TV shows and everything in the past. Like he was always he came from Earth. I think he was like a human maybe, or I think he was human, but like he was an alien here. So I don't know, maybe that kind of was a bit of a different twist, I guess. He was always so focused on the living beings on Earth and like how they could be bettered. So I guess maybe that was a bit of a takeaway. Like we see like the Guardians face off against like literally otherworldly threats out in the galaxy, but having like a threat from Earth like would have given it maybe a more perhaps like intense and personal tone to the villain and his confrontation with a rocket. Admittedly, it was already personal enough as it was, but I guess like I don't know, maybe it would have given it more, like I said, more personal or more close to home feeling of who who he was and what his goals were. He was basically considered a god in various parts of the galaxy. Like he believes himself to be the true God because, as he puts it, like there is no God. That's why I stepped in. He just literally has a God complex, and he feels like he should control everything, and everything needs to go his way. And he is powerful, but like you get the feeling that he's not as powerful as he thinks he is for some reason. This movie just really gives you this feeling of like heartbreak and horror and like but also like joy and everything because we see that while the Guardians break up and everything like hurts and everything, you see things slowly start to like heal or maybe like alter in a new good way. Like we see Rocket like take on a the leadership role and like the mentor role as the leader of the Guardians, this new team of Groot who had well he didn't have as much like growth or change in this, but like you see him as a more like it's like his growth from like Infinity War and everything, like who he is now as an individual. Like you see him as more of like the group that we knew in the first Guardians of the Galaxy, caring, stoic, in some ways lovable, and truly like emotionally connected to the others. You have a Kraglin who struggled through this movie to like like to take on this, like I guess you could say in some ways to like fill the void for what Yondu left. So that was maybe still Peter's role to fill in some ways, but like taking on Yondu's weapon and like seeing him eventually learn and like really show himself as a hero in his own right for being able to use the arrow like how Yondu did, like being not using his head but using his heart to like guide his tool to help others. You have, I think Pyla was the one of the newer members. I mean, she had her scenes here and there. I think she's another member of the Guardians in the comics. I mean, admittedly, I'm not as aware of the Guardians of the Galaxy in the comics as I am of other Marvel characters. So maybe I don't have like the same like understanding as others do of this. Like Adam Warlock, I think he was presented as I think the High Priest said he was like he came out of his cocoon too early, and he was not like as I guess you could say developed as he should have been. Like he like was still like had his scenes here and there, but he didn't, from what I understand of like my minimal understanding of his character, like he wasn't as powerful or like as imposing as he is in other media. But we see him like eventually like grow as an individual, specifically because of Groot saving him and saying he deserved a second chance. We see him become a guardian as well. And Cosmo is another is also a new part of the Guardians team, though she has appeared a couple of times in the films before this. As some might know, Cosmo in the comics and some of the other incarnations he appears in other Marvel media is actually a male dog, but in here, Cosmo is a female. That's because, as is literally said in the film, I believe the dog's name was Laika, the dog the Soviets sent up in space so many years back with no return trip to Earth. It's one thing to send a dog up into space. It's another thing to have no way of bringing the dog home. So her story is, her origin is really tragic as well. And one of the scientists, I believe in his biography, I can't remember his name or the biography, the name of the biography, he said that what they did to her, to Laika, was a mistake. They should not have done that, and the regret really stuck with him. And While Cosmo, she doesn't really talk about it. She does mention it at like during a card game that happens in the show, and it's you see that her influence in some ways in the film. She's not the biggest character. She's not the biggest side character, but we see her potential in this. Her connection and her passion for the others. She and also her telekinesis. She is a really strong new member of the Guardians. But seeing her as another part in this film was really special. Like seeing, at least in one like universe, or at least created universe, that fictionally created universe, that Leica had like at least went on to live a new life while she's no longer home on Earth. She has a new home. So seeing that was really touching. I really thought maybe while she joined the new team of the Guardians led by Rocket, I wish we'd seen more like interactions between her and Rocket, like both Earth animals in origin with these new things that were like added to them to make them who they are now. But like seeing them like interact before Leica slash Cosmo joins the team, seeing them like interact and maybe Leica trying to support Rocket and trying to like bring out his emotions and feelings and trying to be there for him as a friend and a member of her new pack would have been really touching. But maybe we'll get that in like the films to come. Seeing this new team, how they interact with one another, maybe a Rocket and Leica having this unique bond because of they're both from Earth. Their things were done to them. I mean, I can't remember how Leica got her, or in this case Cosmo got her telekinesis and everything. She's one of the characters that I'm not very familiar with. So sorry if maybe I'm pairing their situations a bit too similarly. So please let me know in the comments below about Cosmo. But seeing like I'm hoping that maybe in the future films we could see them bond, interact, and see this unique connection between them. Because like this new Guardians team, while while it will has some like growing to do and everything, seeing Rocket leading them and seeing these both new and old members of the team together, I think it has potential, and it's another really good thing about this movie. We see though Rocket's influence on the others, like him becoming like the caring and like eventually more, in some ways, wise leader of the new team of the Guardians, and see how like they've come together through tragedy and heartbreak and coming to really unite together as friends, as a team, and as a family. So while there were nitpicks here and there, and while this might not be the best MCU film since Endgame, I do think it's still one of the best in terms of emotion and character. I hope you liked this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'd love to hear what you have to say about this movie. And once again, I hope you liked this video, and thank you for watching.